Abhinav Rathi, is my voice audible? Can you please?
Yes, ma'am. You're audible.
Okay, I'd also like to know if my screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am. I can see.
Okay, we shall waiting for other members of your class to join. Then we shall start the class.
Okay.
Can anyone of you tell me Chandan Pratap is from which class? Someone is trying to join from outside MIT domain. Does anybody know?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we start in a minute from now. Good morning, Pratibha. As all of your class members have not joined, so let's start with the question. In the meanwhile, others will also join. So the question goes like, uh, can you tell the name of the scientist who proved DNA as a hereditary material? Can you name the scientist that proved DNA as the genetic material? You can write your answers in the chat box. Okay, I've got only one answer, Prerna. Okay, now keep everyone, please keep writing the answer in the chat box. In the meanwhile, I like to discuss something with you. One thing that I had posted the course outlay, and also in the coming lectures, I shall be posting your lecture material, that is the PDFs and the handouts. I'll ask again. Please tell me if at any point I my voice breaks or if I get inaudible, because I'm simultaneously present on the other screen as well with my presentation. So I would like, whenever you receive any video recording or whenever you receive any kind of material, kindly, few of you, not all, if possible, few of you, please write it down that you have received, because it is, there can be certain internet glitches. I might have posted and you might not have received in your classroom, or you might not have received any email notifications. So please promptly, whenever I post any video recording, and there have been incidences in the past with your seniors that some of them did not receive, so I had to check the problem, whatever might have been there at their end. So kindly please, whenever you receive, two or three of you, please write it down that you have received this particular video recording in your Google Classroom. So I shall be sure about the fact. Another thing I came to understand that, and this is what Abhinav sir, he's a class counselor, also told me that some of you are having some problems because I'm speaking in English. Can please genuinely, if some of you can tell me what exactly problem you are facing, so we can actually resolve things in our classes. Please switch on your mic, class. I like to interact with you. Class, please switch on your mics. I like to interact with you.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, dear.
Good morning,
Yes, I
ma'am.
would. Yeah,
Good
thank you.
morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Uh, yes. Now, please tell me what exactly problem you're facing because I got this conveyed by Abhinav sir that you're having some problem because I'm delivering my lectures in English. Now, please, can you specify the problem is because since we are not having one-on-one interaction on real-time basis, we are joining virtually here. So, and of course, you don't switch on your camera. So, I really do not know by your expressions that you're not following and whether you're writing or not. So, please tell me so that we do not face any problems in the future. And don't worry, it's just between you and me. There's no complaint mechanism. You do not have to worry. I like to keep an open platform with all my students because this is the only way how we can proceed further. So kindly do not have any apprehensions regarding that. Please come out, please speak whatever problem you're having. Let's take 5 minutes of our lecture for that because I don't want anybody to lag behind. Class, kindly answer me, or I assume that it's okay with you. Can you hear me? Biotech and micro students.
Yes,
Let-
ma'am.
Ishit, can you please switch on your mic and tell me? Would be nice to hear your voice. Where is lot of disturbance? Ishit, you're at your home. How can there be disturbance at your home, bache?
Hello.
Yes, please.
Yes. Hello. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. May I know your name, please?
Ma'am, my name is Ishit.
Okay, yes, Ishit, tell me.
Ma'am, there is problem with my phone, ma'am.
Is
That's why
problem where, Ishit?
Hello.
My voice is not clear. Is it that with everyone? There might be some internet connections.
Ma'am, your voice is break.
My voice is breaking because Ishit has switched on his mic. That is the reason why. So that I would like. Okay, if nobody has any problem, then I shall proceed with the class. You may continue switching off your mics. Let me proceed. So, class, since nobody has discussed any problems with me, then frankly speaking, I assume that you do not have any problem. Although I'm open to all the suggestions anytime, you can WhatsApp me, and plus please do that in the group because I've been getting some person WhatsApp by as a personalized message from students, and it is difficult between the classes and we have a pretty hectic schedule, so it is difficult between the classes to answer to each and every student. So please post in your group so that each and everyone's problem gets solved. And again, since you're not discussing any of your problems with me, Nishita, if my voice is not clear, kindly please check your connection. Nishita, kindly please check your connection if my voice is not clear. Am I audible enough to everyone?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
You're audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Thank you so
ma'am.
much. I'm assuming, Bache, that you don't have any problems. So I'm proceeding with my lecture now. Let's revise what we had studied in the previous class. We had tried to understand what this term central dogma means. Basically, a flow of information from the genetic material and synth- I'm sorry, finally synthesizing the cellular requirements in the form of, or specifically, if we can say, uh, leading to gene expression, which can be manifested at the molecular level, and from the molecular level, or say from the genotype, it is expressed as a phenotype, right? This was a very simple thing that we had tried to understand that day. I'm just going through the slides once again so that it's clear to everyone. We had also, I had given you the example how, the message encoded in the hereditary material is transcribed into messenger RNA and then further translated into the language of proteins, as in QYR are coding, for example, this 3 nucleotide or the nitrogenous bases actually are coding for Y, an abbreviated form of an amino acid, tyrosine. And hence, further, as you can also appreciate, that we are having this macromolecular structure of protein, the alpha helix and the beta pleated chain, uh, beta pleats to your pleat sheets, and further the when you zoom out at the micromolar level, we see some this kind of structure. And further, if we keep zooming out, then of course we can see it as keratin in our hair, for example. So we took a leap back in time and we tried to answer some questions which were also present before the scientist. One thing, to determine what is the hereditary material, why you resemble your father or your mother, why certain genetic diseases are inherited. And it was, if you remember your history classes, certain genetic diseases were very much prevalent in the European countries, in the European monarchy. How all this thing has been possible, and trying to correlate the informational molecules, DNA, RNA, and protein. Now, it is very important for us to understand that biotechnology or microbiology so far had not been established as a science. So, all these scientists which are working, they are not core bacteriologists or core virologists. You will study in virology also. It was in 1935 that Wendell M. Stanley, he actually crystallized tobacco mosaic virus. So, in parallel to the advances in chemistry and physics, we were moving on towards the advances in biological sciences and establishing step by step, taking very baby steps, as I may say, towards the establishment of microbiology, and further on the technical aspects as biotechnology as a branches when we started studying more of genetic engineering, and that was prevalent in the 1970s. So actually a good leap of time, wherein more than 60 years ago, uh, when central dogma was put forward by Francis Crick, and certain experiments actually led us to the understanding that DNA as an important component of genetic material. Now, I have written some lines of my own that it may be the only one, because there are certain viruses, for example, tobacco mosaic virus. We have Picorna viridae family, the rhinovirus, and of course, we have Corona SARS epidemic these days. So, these are RNA viruses. So also, when we study the evolutionary history, we understand, and some scientists have put forward the concept that first, initially, it was RNA, and from that, DNA, the deoxy came, right? By certain chemical changes that were occurring in so-called the soup, wherein various chemical reactions were carrying out. I'm talking about the time wherein we studied the formation of earths, uh, and various chemical and physical aspects are studied. Also, I told you that the structure of DNA being established by Watson and Crick, determining, as you can see, George Gamow was a physicist who in 1954 gave the possibility that DNA could direct determine structure of proteins. So what we are trying to find out, that although some chemical experiments it was proved that it is a deoxynucleic acid, Um, but we could find RNA, also we could find protein also. Now if these three macromolecules are present inside the cells, then what is the relation between them and which of them is the heredity material is a important question which needs to be solved, and which was solved ultimately by many scientific interventions. This was the answer for your question, which was asked in the comment box on the chat box. Some of you gave the answer and some of you gave the wrong answer, but this is Oswald uh, Avery. As you can see, I have written his name here as well. Sorry, in the previous slide. Avery Anniskelis in 1944, who made it clear that DNA as a genetic material exists in the cells. What people actually did, scientists in various laboratories and specifically in European countries, that they put together this piece of puzzle, that it is from the DNA after replication that the genetic information is passed on to next generation, and further on this genetic information is transcribed into messenger RNA, and which travels into the cytoplasm, as you can see, and further translated into the language of proteins. What also we understood, that of course it is an orderly and unidirectional. What central dogma tells us, orderly flow of information and unidirectional, because if it is not orderly, if I go back to my slides, if it is not orderly, say if two of these bases will not code for any amino acid, and if I add one more base here, there shall be, as a mutation, of course there shall be a shift in the reading, and hence we call it as a frame shift mutation as well, and an entirely different amino acid shall be coded, leading to a change in structure or function or both. So if that doesn't happen, so of course it's a orderly and a unidirectional. So it is read as, if I go back to my slide again, it is read as CAGTAC and not as CATGAC. So it's not read reverse, it is read in 5 prime to 3 prime direction. Also try to understand that all these things look like a very childish stuff to us. We have been reading it since whenever we started understanding biology, but understanding these molecular mechanisms was pretty difficult and a challenge to scientists those days. Further on, what Crick said and what were the implications? The implication was more of informal and not a chemical one. Uh, Also, we had understood all these points. I shall not go into details again. Rather, let me come to the slide which was to be taken as a part of today's lecture. So there was certain further questions and further challenges which were posted and poured in by various scientists in the community, which was uh, we are saying, for example, we have DNA polymerase which replicates the DNA. What about those viruses wherein RNA was present as a genetic material? Uh, and how was that machinery replicating? One, we have a curious case of HIV, which has an enzyme called reverse transcriptase, wherein from the RNA, which is the genetic material, DNA is made. So this flow of information which we studied, that from DNA the information is passing on, and I'm putting it in a very common parlance. From DNA, the information is passed to messenger RNA. This reverse transcriptase enzyme actually gave a blow to that theory and questioned the central dogma that whether it can be taken as universal concept or not, because reverse transcriptase enzyme is used by HIV to copy the RNA as DNA, and further that DNA is integrated into the host chromosome. Right. Now, other questions to be answered were that was RNA the product of DNA? Was there any direct chemical modification taking place inside the cell? And if yes, then what was the biochemical change? The enzymatic machinery, both for DNA replication and for further transcription and translation, had to be elucidated. Although in the previous diagram, I have shown you and a very simplistic view. Class, there are a number of enzymes involved at each and every steps. There are number of factors which we'll be studying in detail involved at each and every step. If you can see, as simple as if I have a double stranded DNA and if I have to copy it down, definitely I'll have to separate the strands. Therefore, I need some unzipping mechanism here. Also, I need an enzyme that will be adding the nucleotides one after the other, and hence from the parental strand and onto the template of parental strand, the daughter strand, as my pointer goes, will be synthesized, as you can see here. Right. And it is not the whole story does not end here. As I told you also before, that there are a number of factors involved in the whole process. Similar case goes for transcription and further on with translation, which we have to study in detail in further lectures, although it's good amount of time for that. Now, allow me to move to another set of slide, and let's try to, is this slide visible, class?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Thank you so much. So
yes,
far, any
ma'am.
Yes,
questions?
ma'am.
So far, any questions? Okay, can you please type in the chat box which scientist gave central dogma? Which scientist hypothesized a central dogma? Please type in the chat box. And I shall wait for your answer for next 2 minutes. And all of you are please required to answer. Preeti Sharma, do not write short forms, please. And do not write only the surnames. It would be good for you. There's so many. Yes, Ishit, that is the right way to answer. So is Parul. And I'm waiting for others. Right, Shama? Wonderful. Class, someone is trying to join, some Chandan Pratap is trying to join from the other domain kindly, and it's has been directed to us that we cannot allow anyone outside the MIT domain to join. So please keep that in mind. Join from your official email ID. Okay, moving forward. Yes, I've got the correct answers. So we'll study in the this half of the lecture the various scientific interventions carried out and how did we come to understand that our DNA or the nucleic acids are my genetic material. Now, a simple question that should come into your mind is that why is protein not a genetic material, and what were the experimental setups which were employed to study that DNA is the genetic material, right? Or DNA is causing some kind of change, and that kind of change might be hereditary, right? And therefore this is the unit of life. This macromolecule is the unit of life and the unit of gene expression. For example, if I have a bacteria, say Staphylococcus aureus, one of the pathogens which are responsible for causing pus formation in your body, um, or in human body by and large. I do not want you to get any infection. So definitely when that bacteria thrives on any kind of infection, and if it's not properly treated, then definitely pus formation will happen in your body. For us, it is important to understand that some agent is responsible. Of course it is bacteria, but that pus formation or that particular function that the bacteria is performing, it can be pus formation from part of medical biotechnology and microbiology, or it can be as good as formation of ethyl alcohol, as you also will come to understand in further classes, and you will study food biotechnology and microbiology. So we also use yeast strains for formation of alcoholic beverages, for fermentation, various types of fermentation, for as simple as making breads. There's some machinery is there which is causing these kinds of changes to take place, which are either helpful to us or they are either harmful to us. So the only way to determine that which macromolecule is responsible for such manifestations, either productive or non-productive for humankind, is to make those kind of experimental setups which will give us the direct evidence, and this will be clear in the coming experiments which were carried on by different scientists. So first, as the very first point goes, understanding the chemical nature, deciphering the chemical nature of DNA. So we have to understand that it is deoxyribonucleic acid. What comprises this deoxyribonucleic acid? We have nitrogenous bases, we have a sugar phosphate backbone, and if by those chemical analysis we were able to determine the chemical nature of DNA, then a very important question that comes into our mind is that what is the conformation? Now, if you remember the previous lecture, and we had revised also, that DNA as a double helical structure is present in your body, in our body, right? Now, how is this double helical structure being arranged? What is the conformation? How are all these specific units joined together? So not only, as I'm repeating myself, understanding the chemical nature, but also the three-dimensional structure of DNA. That is, what is the sequence of these units? Is it sugar, phosphate, nitrogenous base, or is it sugar, nitrogenous base, phosphate, or maybe entirely different from them? How are these they interacting with each other? What is the chemical nature? This becomes the chemical part of it. Now the functional part, the instruction which is encoded, and how that instruction is leading to the formation of all other cellular components. That is, herein we are trying to unravel the definition of a gene. And as we all know, and we came to understand that it is heritable, passes on from mother to progeny, or from from parent to the child. So therefore, also how it is being replicated, and certain cells, and if you know, the meristematic cells are there, rapidly dividing cells are there present, of course, in plants as well, and our blood cells are also formed, and each of our cells has a particular period of time or lifetime in our body. So how is the genetic information is being passed on? And we shall also come to understand, not in this but in the coming lectures, that there is a semi-conservative replication of DNA. So that is another story for another lecture. Not going into that, but yes, important discoveries for understanding the chemical nature of DNA, and it as a repository or storage of genetic information, for function of DNA as expression, that is we study uh, the terminology of gene, and further on passing it on to the progeny. So an effective tool for storage, expression, and reproduction. Class, I hope you're copying down from my slides and not simply taking a screenshot. Can one of you please answer this? Kindly just do not take screenshot, because overall in the whole day you'll have ample amount of screenshots, but you'll not be able to understand anything, and all you'll be left with is a number of occupying lots of memory on your device, whatever you are doing. That's a requirement of my lecture, because we'll be making a number of diagrams and simultaneously understanding the structure components. So it is a mandatory requirement, and I will ask anytime to upload your classwork, right? And I shall also be giving you assignments, and that shall be based on my presentations. So please write it down. It's mandatory for my class. So, as I was explaining, this is a beautiful diagram depicting the same thing. Yes, we have a parental strand of DNA, as you can see, strand 1 and strand 2 being effectively replicated into the daughter cells. What this whole picture is also trying to make us understand is a set of expression units, different genes coding for different proteins, which may or may not, but although this picture is showing that they do interact to form a beautiful complex, as we can see. So they are product of different expressions and formation of a supramolecular complex. And how it is happening? The genetic information is being transcribed, translated, and further processed into a functional protein. A lot of information on this slide, which you actually do not have to learn. But now we have gone into deciphering the order of nucleotides by a mechanism known as gene sequencing. Many research has gone into that, not a part of this lecture, but like, for example, scientists at Sanger were responsible for that. But let's try to appreciate the size of the base pairs, so many billion, say in Escherichia coli, and I hope you might have studied this as a classical example of a gram-negative bacteria. We have 4.6 million base pairs, and packaged effectively into an organism of micromolar size, something which we cannot see by our eyes, right? And I have also taken this slide to make you understand that what is the biological importance of these particular microorganisms, and of course we have humans as well. So as good in Saccharomyces cerevisiae, we have 12.1. It is a unicellular eukaryote of much importance in fermentation or in industrial biotechnology and microbiology. Or as good as we have Haemophilus influenzae causing bacterial influenza, right? Such beautiful explanation of the sequencing done. And how much do we have in case of humans? Can you just please write in the chat box? How many million nucleotide pairs have been given here? How many million nucleotide base pairs are given for humans here? Please write in the chat box. Sorry. Yes, it's 2.9 in 10 to the power 3. Absolutely right, Prerna. I think only some students are active, rest are not active or are not paying attention. Yes, Ayush, you're absolutely right. Wonderful. So please remember some. So we have some 2.9 into 10 raised to power 3 million nucleotide pairs in our body. Now you can go and boast of this information to any of your friends, right, who didn't take biology or who had not studied microbiology or biotechnologies. You can actually go and tell them that we have 2.9 to 10 to the power 3 million nucleotide pairs in my body coding for, and this actually is present in our cell. Let me tell you very frankly. Okay, so let's proceed further. The biochemical investigation of DNA. Anybody wants to discuss anything? Shivani, you wish to discuss anything? Shivani, your mic is on. Do you wish to say anything? Okay, I shall move forward. Okay. Now, the best way to find out.
अपनी आईडी चला रखी है। अब मैंने बस शिवानी जब बहादुरी वाली उस पे और यू कब की चल रही है यू कब की चल रही है क्लास अब चल
Shivani, you are. Shivani, please switch off your mic. Your voice is disturbing the class.
मैं तो नहीं चली कल
I shall not be able to continue my lecture, Shivani. Shivani, please switch off your mic. Can anyone of you please WhatsApp Shivani or call Shivani and tell her that her mic is on? Okay, I shall continue like that. One of you please call or WhatsApp Shivani to tell her that her mic is on. Okay, so the best way, for example, to carry out the investigations and to establish DNA as a hereditary material would be to study the external manifestation. And the scientists did it by experimenting with Streptococcus pneumoniae. Friedrich Mister, Swiss physician and biologist, and in 19 there were certain experiments which were carried out as far as 1868, and also there were certain contemporary scientists who were working on it, uh, but they had a kind of rudimentary information. So if I take you to another slide, it is further by 1928 that we actually started working uh, dedicatedly on establishing the biochemical nature of DNA. However, we do have to take into account whatever and some landmarks that were established much before that, and one of which, as I told you, was by studies of Mister. I gave you example of pus cells, and this is the reason why I gave you. He had studied the leukocytes. That is, he took he took the pus formation from an infectious patient, and he studied it at the biochemical level. So of course we can see bacteria, and of course we will be able to see the pus formation, and there shall be the white blood cells or leukocytes present at that particular part, right? So what he did, that he isolated a phosphorus containing substance, and he named it as nuclein, right? And this nuclein he found to contain a acidic portion and a basic portion, and further studies established this acidic portion to be DNA and this basic portion to be protein. He also found the same thing in salmon fish sperms, right? So try to understand that we scientists at that particular juncture were trying to establish the presence of this deoxyribonucleic acid or this nuclein in different organisms. So as of now, we do not know what genetic material bacteria is composed of, what genetic material is human composed of. So parallelly, studies on different systems, different living systems was being carried out, both microorganism, plants, humans, and various other life forms. Also tried to understand it was into the same period of time that many experiments, and those students from the microbiology background should be able to appreciate the fact it was during this decade that various experiments were being carried out in the lab of Louis Pasteur, in the lab of Louis Pasteur, in the lab of Robert Koch, and so on. So we were in parallel also establishing what we now call as principles of fermentation, the germ theory of disease, and so on. So far, only a very rudimentary understanding, isolation of nuclein from leukocytes, and the understanding that contains DNA, it contains proteins, right? And partially by chemical methods purifying the nuclein. Coming on further, it was the Griffith experiments which led us to understanding of something which is being transformed and hereditary being carried on. Right? Now, what his experiment was all about, let's try to understand this. Class, he had taken two strains of Streptococcus pneumoniae, a bacteria which causes pneumonia, right? The two strains were S strains and they were R strains. The S strain was called so because of the presence of a polysaccharide. Also, this strain is virulent. Virulent, we commonly mean that it is capable of causing an infection or it is pathogenic, right? And there was an R strain or rough strain called so because of the absence of polysaccharide. Now, as I told you, S strain was pathogenic or virulent strain. So if a person is being infected, or if a animal model is being infected by the living bacteria, then definitely the mouse will contract and will die. Also, those who have studied microbiology, they will be able to understand this is also the basis of germ theory or the Koch postulates. So also, even if you're biotech students, please try to appreciate the fact that we have successfully, by this point, we have been able to isolate or culture bacteria. So microbiology has had advanced up to this point that we were successfully able to isolate bacteria and inject it into the living model organism. So I repeat again, he took two strains, the S strain, the R strain, the S strain, which is pathogenic, which is virulent because of the, and S named so because of the presence of polysaccharide, the R strain called so because of the absence of the same. S strain being virulent will cause pneumonia. R strain being non-virulent, which will not affect our model organism, and the mouse remains healthy. Although we were able to isolate it from the model organism. Now, these are the first two sets. Now, next what was done was heat killing of the S cells. Now, if it is heat killed, that is, we are killing our bacterial cells, definitely those heat killed cells will not cause pneumonia, right? That is a common understanding. If the pathogen has been killed, it will not cause. That is only these the dead remnants of the organism will not cause the disease. Right? Further on, what was done that in the fourth, and here the experiment becomes very interesting. The mouth remains healthy in when the heat killed S cells were used. But when these heat killed S cells were used along with the living R cells. Now if you remember in the second experiment, the living R cells were not leading to death of my model organism. But and the killed S cells were, in that case also the mouth remains healthy. That is, my microorganism, sorry, my model organism is not dying. But when all these two are mixed, that is, the heat killed S cells and the living R cells are mixed together and are administered to mice, the mouse contracts pneumonia. So these, the third and the second one, the fourth one, are the questions posed towards the scientists, that how is it happening that if it is living, it is causing death, if it is killed, it is not causing death, but if both of them are mixed together, my model organism dies. A very common understanding will be that some change, some transformation is happening here, which is causing this change, and hence the death of my model organism. Some factor is being transferred, and somehow these living cells are being transformed and hence into virulent cells. Somehow, some factor is responsible, which is resulting in death of my model organism. Let me go back to the written part of it to make you understand again. 1928 Griffith experiment with bacterium Streptococcus pneumoniae. First one to reveal the transforming principle, which led to discovery that DNA acts as a carrier of genetic information. Some gene is being expressed, which is causing death of my model organism. That is a carrier of genetic information, a carrier of genetic expression. Conducting experiment involving two strains of bacteria, Streptococcus pneumoniae. One strain, as I told you, S, smooth strain having a polysaccharide coat, lethal to mice. Another strain, harmless, avirulent, rough strain, and my model organism survives. He did not say at any point that it was DNA or protein, and it was left to other scientists to carry out other scientific experiments. But he named it that it was some transforming principle, and quoting and quoting his words, which led to the establishment or discovery that DNA acts as a carrier of genetic information slowly in further scientific experiments. So this formed the basis of further discoveries. So I reiterating the results. So the mice which was inoculated with either heat killed bacteria or avirulent bacteria remained free of infection. Number second, mice which was inoculated with a mixture of both became infected and died. So our conclusion is some chemical was transforming, was acting as a transforming principle, and that was being transferred from the dead strain, which was virulent, to the avirulent cells, and it changed them. Also, he found out furthermore in experiment that it was heritable and can be passed on to succeeding generation. So not only this particular generation of S cells can cause pneumonia, but the further colonies which are arising from the single strain is also capable of infecting and causing pneumonia in my model organism, right? It is not restricted to this single cell, but to other generations of these cells as well. Now the question remains with us that what is the component of heat kill bacteria which was transforming, which was protein or DNA. And the very first and experiment and direct evidence was given by a set of physical experiments by a team of scientists, Oswald Avery, Colin MacLeod, and Maclean McCarthy, who gave the first direct evidence of DNA as the bearer of genetic information, a very important landmark in the history of biological sciences. Now, a very important thing to establish something is to see its direct consequences, right? That if I am uh, making a particular kind of food, say if on a pizza base I'm adding cheese, so this will be the consequence, right? Or you have different varieties of pizza with different pizza toppings, so and all of them taste different. Why? Because this is happening. Somewhere is a cheese burst, somewhere you have more of mushrooms, you let them add broccoli, or for example it's capsicum or jalapenos for that matter, and each of the pizza toppings they taste different, right? Why it is that? Because in some we have added more cheese, in another I have added more capsicum. What I'm trying to make you understand here is that we can proceed towards establishing or proving our hypothesis either by explaining the direct consequence. If there is capsicum present on my pizza topping, this is how it will taste. The other way is to give a parallel, that if mushroom is present in my pizza topping, this is how it will taste, and it is different from how the capsicum topping is tasting. So either you directly go for the proof or you disapprove the other. So this was the second approach which the team of Avery, MacLeod, and McCarthy took in 1944, is that a pragmatic question is whether RNA is a genetic material, whether protein is a genetic material, or whether DNA is genetic material. That is, what is their functional roles. So if we eliminate all of the macromolecular presence, then we can directly prove by extracting the DNA that this was the transforming principle in Griffith's experiment, right? So Avery and his colleagues experimentally extracted DNA from the heat-killed pneumococci, right? Usual ethanolic precipitation, and you shall also study this in molecular biology experiments uh, whenever your lab is conducted, right? So first is extracting the DNA and removing uh, from the saline solutions, and further on precipitating and removing each and every component, as in the protein precipitated by chloroform, polysaccharides, they can be hydrolyzed with the help of enzymes, and of course if you want to further confirm it, the presence of RNA, the ribonucleases will degrade the RNA present, and the proteinases, for example, we have trypsin, we have chymotrypsin. These will further degrade the protein uh, contaminants in our experiment. So when all these things have been removed and we have extracted DNA, we can insert DNA into another cell and see the changes which it is causing. So similarly, they extracted the DNA and inserted it into the non-virulent bacteria, a process commonly also which we understand as transformation. Now, I hope, and you please tell me, have you studied in your class conjugation, transformation, transduction? Can one of you please switch on your mic and tell me whether you have studied conjugation, transformation, and transduction in your theory classes? Lavanya, I'm sorry, I came to the screen later on. If you actually have to say something in between, kindly please switch on your mic because I'm on the other slide. Sometimes due to some internet problem, the slide presentation goes blank. There might have been some internet problem.
Excuse me.
कब से आप slide नहीं देख पा रहे हैं इशित?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Can you please tell me आप कब से slide नहीं देख पा रहे हैं?
Ma'am, last 10 minutes.
Ishit, you should have told me, no? I told you I'm working on different tabs. अगर कोई इंटरनेट इशू या ग्लिच हो जाती है बीच में तो हम is it visible now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Please do inform me, class. I'm working on multiple tabs. One is the tab of your meet, one is the tab of your class attendance, and the third tab is of my presentation. Please do inform me whenever this goes out. So आपने कहाँ तक देखा था मुझे ये बताएंगे प्लीज. ये स्लाइड विजिबल थी आपको?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, was this slide visible to you?
No, ma'am.
Okay, please do tell me. So in this
Ma'am,
last yeah,
I
please
want to
Ishit.
answer the transaction. Ma'am, introducing the ma'am GNA by GNA vector ma'am, मतलब सेल में इंट्रोड्यूस करना वेक्टर या जीएनए को जेनेटिक बाय जेनेटिक मटेरियल ट्रांजैक्शन.
Acha, transduction, transformation. So you know about it. This is what I wanted to understand. Thank you, Ishit. Thank you so much. And as a request again, please, जहाँ भी presentation मेरी चली जाए, there might be some internet glitch, which is not my fault. Do tell me. Okay, I'll straight away move to the Griffith experiment because there's 2 minutes left to go, and I shall take it again in the coming class. Is this slide visible?
Yes,
Is
ma'am.
this slide visible? Wonderful. Let's try to understand the experiment and I shall revise it again in the coming lecture. So there was a living S cell, right, of the virulent strain, the R of the non-virulent strain. If I inject the S cells into my model organism, my model organism dies. And we were able to, so far as I told you, also able to isolate colonies from the dead organism. And if reinfected, as you know about the Koch postulates, they were capable of causing disease again in my model organism, hence establishing the Koch postulates of the germ theory of disease. One. Number two, the R or the non-virulent strain. Now, why it is non-virulent strain? Because it didn't contain the polysaccharide code. It is called rough and smooth, and the harmless avirulent strain, that is, it is not going to cause pneumonia in the model organism. So S stands for smooth and R for the rough, depending upon the absence or the presence of polysaccharide coat. Right. In the third set, he heat killed the S cells or the bacteria causing pneumonia, and hence my model organism did not die or it remained healthy. However, interesting things happened in the fourth set when these two were mixed. The heat killed S cells and the living R cells. When both of them were mixed together, the model organism died. Right? I hope you know that from 10:30 another class starts.
Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. It's time for another class. We shall take it up again in the coming lecture. Thank you everyone for coming. We shall meet you in the next
Thank
lecture.
you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.